situation in Belmarsh prison is very difficult. Julian is in his cell 23 hours a day or more. Everyone is in lockdown. It's solitary confinement-like conditions, and 2 prisoners have died to date that we know of, and many others are infected. I'd like to read you some parts of the submission that I made to the court as part of Julian's bail application in March. I regard myself as a principled person with strong moral standards. Julian is the person who I chose to start a family with. I have raised our children without Julian being present, and to the best of my ability, at the same time as supporting him by constancy and, I hope, stability and personal integrity. I have gone to great lengths to shelter our children from the climate that surrounds him. Julian has respected my wish for privacy and has sought to protect me for many years from the harm of his immediate environment and the glare of the media. My close relationship with Julian has been the opposite of how he is viewed, of mutual respect, of reserve, and attempts to shield one another from some of the nightmares that have surrounded our lives together. After he was arrested and in Belmarsh prison, with difficulty and after a considerable delay, we were able to regain contact, and I have been able to visit him, sometimes with our children. I realize that, but for me, he would by now have descended into an abyss of despair. The most difficult time in Belmarsh was in the months when, in the healthcare unit, he was in effective solitary confinement for most of the time. He is now once more in isolation, this time for effectively 23 out of 24 hours a day and perhaps longer. The limited exercise for possibly now 40 men, together in a small exercise yard, for a short period of time may give some slight respite, but nevertheless at the same time the opportunity for infection from the coronavirus. I have feared with strong reason that I may lose Julian to suicide, if there is no way in which he can stop his extradition to the USA. I now fear that I may lose him for different reasons and much sooner due to the virus. I know very well that his health is extremely poor, and I can detail the different aspects of that poor health. When in the healthcare unit, he was taken from a ward into a single cell for many months in a form of isolation, save for a very few hours each day, and I noticed, as I described at the time, that he was very diminished, like a withering flower. I observed how he could no longer function coherently. There's no doubt in my mind that the experience was one which it would be extraordinarily worrying if it were to be repeated, as it now is. It is a matter of general knowledge that the future of coronavirus will continue to require the enforcement of whatever forms of isolation, however inadequate, can be maintained in an institutional setting. All of the fears that we have had to date have now become compounded, since the realization that he is in circumstances where he will inevitably not be able to see us, and where he may himself die as a result of increased risk to COVID-19. Every lifeline that we have had in terms of my being able to support him have been shut down. I therefore cannot help him in the way that I have tried to do. I make this statement now only because our lives are on the brink. I fear that Julian could die. I have witnessed a degree of his suffering over a number of years, which I have found shattering, and have tried to help him, but don't any longer know how. I cannot elect to refrain from making this statement if it might assist the court in understanding that the circumstances in which Julian might be granted bail are wholly different from the circumstances of his life, and indeed mine, some 8 years ago.